All right. Welcome back, people. Gonna drink my coffee, chill for a sec. Why is that not working? All righty. We got asteroids today, but I'm just gonna take it a little slow. Uh, what do I need? I need a Chrome window. What's that? Brush to Fisher / asteroids. So this is the repo we've been working on. That is not how you expand a window. I think we really only have one thing to work on today, and that's UFOs from last week. So that should be pretty, I don't want to say quick or easy, but doable, we'll say. Get the audio off there. So the game works. We can keep score. Different score for different meteors. This UFO has no collision and has no collision for ship, no collision for lasers. We've got particles, we've got collision on the meteors, we've got lives for the meteors, we've got afterburn on the ship. Colliders could be a little better on the ship, but I'm not too concerned about that. When we do a new game, it all works except for, I think, the UFO. Because I guess we're having some despawn issues. Not really issues, more like warnings. If you try to despawn something that's already been removed, it just, can't be double removed. So, not really an issue. But we could fix that too. Nice rainy day today in San Francisco. All right, so let's start to get into this. We need to do UFO stuff. UFO stuff. I guess I'll mark this on the issue. UFO stuff needs to be collision with ship, collision with lasers, score when destroyed, UFO shoots lasers. I guess let's not make it laser. I guess maybe lasers. I don't know. Shoots its own lasers at player at intervals. I think I'm okay with the sine wave movement. I don't really need the movement to be very interesting. Hello, Prince. Scheduled the stream late, so I don't even know if anybody's going to show up. Forgot to schedule it last week after I finished the other stream, so scheduled it last night. So anybody who's been awake for 10 hours saw me schedule it. Collision with ship, collision with lasers, score when destroyed. UFO needs to shoot its own lasers at the player. What else needs to happen for UFOs? I think I'm not too concerned with how often UFOs spawn. We could always decrease that for like actual gameplay, but I think for the purposes of this, it's kind of like a test game, and having the UFO spawn more often is fine. because I think the only thing we would do for the actual like production version of this game is reduce the spawn rate. Yeah. Okay, so we've got UFO. We need to, what do we do first? Do we do ship collision first? I think we do collision for lasers and meteors, and where do we do? So we're putting all the collision in lib.rs for some reason. Why, I don't know. That's just kind of where I started writing it and where it still lives. I don't think I'm going to refactor that right now. I think we'll just take the same pattern here. There's no way we can merge this, right? Actually, it's interesting. So one thing we could do is put everything in different layers, collision layers, because we are using Bevy XPBD. And collision layers would let us take like meteors on a layer, lasers on a layer, player on a layer, and like UFO on a layer or something like that. And if we do that, then these not ship destroyed, but in the other, like the colliding entities, is going to be filled with only the things that it's possible to collide with. Which is nice, but we don't really have any performance concerns around like the amount of entities in the scene. And I don't think we will for a very long time. I don't think you'll be able to play the game the way it's currently set up long enough to have a performance issue in that sense. So the question is adding two systems to handle this easier than setting up collision layers. I think it is. So we'll continue with that for now. So this is going to be ship UFO collision. And it'll be, I guess, a ship destroyed event. The UFO also needs to get destroyed. So maybe we create another event for that. And then we can listen to that in the score as well. My audio is low. How low? Let me pull up debugging. Just gonna listen to my own stream for a second. That's not the button I wanted to click. It helps if you click the right buttons. View channel. Okay, we're live here. Can I hear myself? Let's max out the volume on the headset. Let's try this. I'll just wrap it back up. 60% lower than Instagram. I don't know that Instagram is the volume level I'm targeting, but I appreciate the information. It's a little bit noisy, but I think this is... We'll go with that for now. How's that going for you, Steve? There's a little bit of a delay, so I don't want to just like sit here and fiddle with audio forever. It's always tough to tell how much signal I'm sending out to YouTube. That's better? Sweet. Wonderful. Okay, so we'll have a ship destroyed event and a UFO destroyed event. And we're listening to those in different places. This system is only meant to handle collisions between the ship and the UFO. So we'll get entities that have UFO. We'll query for... Well, that's an interesting thought too. Um, because we're doing like ship to thing collisions, we could do these checks in the same place. So I actually don't think we need a whole new system here. So this is just going to be like a ship collision system then. That's meteors. We don't spawn off a meteor destroyed event here, do we? No. Because we handle the meteors in another place. Laser meteor, ship meteor. Oh, the ships don't get destroyed, or the meteors don't get destroyed. So I think I'm deciding right now whether to do a query here. So we could do something like or here, and we could do with UFO or with meteor. And then down here, our function becomes more generic. And all that happens if you hit a thing is, I think the ship gets destroyed. I don't think the UFO gets destroyed. So I think that's actually what we want. So let's do or here. And this is not just going to be meteors anymore. It's going to be with meteor or with UFO. Assuming that we have the right setup here. Let's see what the Rust compiler has given us back. Expected one generic argument. So we have to make this a tuple, I guess. If I don't rename meteors now, then I'll never rename it, which is fine. So UFO isn't actually going to get destroyed by a ship meteor collision, so we don't actually need that. So adding with UFO here, I think should be enough. Because all we're saying is that it needs to have the same behavior as a meteor when the ship collides into it. Okay, so there's a meteor between us and the UFO. That's unfortunate. Wait for the UFO to hit over here. Okay, so when you drive into the UFO now, it gets destroyed. Or your ship gets destroyed. So that's what we wanted. That was significantly easier than I thought it was going to be. Even though I didn't think it was going to be that difficult, I thought we were just going to have to create a new system. Cool. So UFO collisions with ship done by adding one component. We need to do UFO collision with lasers. Now, the interesting thing is going to be, how do we differentiate between UFO lasers and ship lasers later, like player lasers? Because the player's own lasers can't collide with the ship, but the UFO's lasers can. Yeah, just a single component added in our query and suddenly it works. I understand why people have issues thinking in ECS, if that makes sense. Like any new domain or any new paradigm is going to be tough to get your head around. And in my experience, you don't really start getting that understanding until you've built some significant software in it, even if you've read a lot about it, especially with the way that Bevy does ECS, because Bevy is kind of like pushing the boundaries of what ECS can do. But yeah, the fact that we can just add with UFO, if it's a meteor or if it's UFO, it can, you know, destroy the ship. We should rename this system though. What is this now? This is ship. It's not ship meteor collision. What is it? Ship. Whatever. We'll leave it as ship meteor. I can't think of a better name. How much more difficult is 2D compared to 3D? In what respect? Oh, 3D to 2D. For me personally, 3D is harder because I've done less 3D. And I think that's really what it comes down to. I don't necessarily think that one is harder than the other. You do obviously have to deal with the additional dimension. But I think really what it comes down to is where is your area of expertise? If that makes sense. Like, have you worked a bunch in 3D or have you worked a bunch in 2D? I've worked a ton in 2D doing, you know, web stuff and other things and whatnot. So like 2D makes more sense in my head, like off the bat. And for 3D stuff, like there are things that I don't know. Like how do you blend animations in a 3D sense? Like a sprite sheet, I could see how you would choose indices or something like that. And I assume it's similar, but do I really know how to accurately blend animations in a run walk cycle without looking up a tutorial? Not really right now. Ship entity collision, if it is both any other object. Yeah, it's not any entity though either, right? It's meteors and UFOs. It's anything that you can hit that will destroy the ship. So yeah, I don't know that I would say 2D or 3D is inherently harder. I think it just depends on where your experience lies. So laser meteor collision is our other thing. Lasers, for right now, I'm just going to treat all lasers as applicable in this sense. Oh yeah, so entity is prints, and everything in the entire game world is an entity. So if it's a ship entity collision, then how do I explain this? I'm going to run the game for a second so I can point things. The surrounding box here, every button, all the text, those are all entities. This checkbox is an entity. You know, the image or like the things I'm spawning in are entities. Like these three things here, plus the ship icons, they're all entities. Like these things in the top left, the like life counter as well as the score, those are all entities. Like an entity is literally just think of an entity as an ID and a vec, right? Everything gets packed into this vec, and it has an index in that vec. So everything we're doing has an ID, so that we can go access it. The way Bevy's ECS works is like you have that position in the vec, but you also have what generation it is. So if you are at index 2 and you remove the thing at index 2 and insert a new thing, how do you know that's a new thing? So the IDs are actually like 2 U32s or something like that. So it's the index in the array or index in the vec, and also like which generation of object it is. I was thinking only entities in respect to the actual gameplay, but yeah. So laser meteor collision. This is also going to be laser UFO collision. So I think here we need to differentiate, right? So we'll need a UFO destroyed event. That's not how you write that. So we'll need a UFO destroyed event. The lasers can check. This is it laser meteor collision? I think I've named these two things different. So this is ship meteor collision, and ship is the thing that is doing the hitting. And this is really meteor laser collision. Does that matter? I think that's a better way to do it now that I think about it. Meteor laser collision. Then we'll get rid of this, And we do need to change this now because we set that up somewhere. I think that's just right in main. Ship meteor collision. I obviously didn't keep my naming convention consistent here. So there's that and that. And then this can be, what, UFO laser collision? So this is like the difference between the two directions, I guess. Like what thing is doing the colliding? That's in my talk, trying to learn Bevy. Yes, that is in my talk. Definitely. I think that's a really important thing to get across too. The entities as, you know, like the indexes. That's not actually how things are stored in the back end. Like it's not actually one giant vec. But it does give a really nice mental model for like, hey, these are just IDs, right? An entity is just an ID. There's nothing special about it. All the functionality comes from components and systems and events and other things. Have I ever heard of that? Heard of what? I'm not sure what you're referring to, Steve, if you want to clarify your question. Okay, so UFO laser collision. This is going to be UFO destroyed. Right? We've got the lasers. The lasers are hitting things. I do think we could clean this up. I think we can do it from the lasers perspective, and that'll actually be easier later. Because what we're going to do later is the UFO is going to fire lasers. And they're going to fire in the same, like, kind of way. So we'll probably, like, laser and tag it with the origin, like, from UFO. And then we would be able to check the laser origin. But I'm going to live with this for the moment. So this is meteors, UFOs. Entity, meteor type. This is going to be UFO. I guess it's just with UFO, right? We're supposed to have big and small UFOs. I don't know that I'm going to, though. So I think I'm just going to get rid of that meteor type. This will be UFO destroyed. This doesn't need a type anymore. This is going to be UFO destroyed. And get the position it was destroyed at. We haven't created this event yet. But for every UFO, it checks to see if a laser is colliding with it. And sends the UFO destroyed event. Which means that similar to the way that we're doing this in the Meteor plugin. So what do we have? Add event Meteor destroyed. So we're going to do this. This is Meteor destroyed event handler. We're probably going to also have this. So this is for UFO stuff, and we'll just add these here. I'm going to get rid of the sandbox on the front here. Pausable needs to come in. This is going to be UFO destroyed, which we haven't created yet. And the way that we've done our destroyed event is like this. And then I'm going to grab, do I grab this? I guess I do. So we'll do the destroyed event handling at the bottom here. This is going to be UFO destroyed. How are we doing the ships? Did we do the same thing for ship? Because we spawned the particles for ship too, right? Yeah, okay. So these are also very similar systems. They operate on different values, but it's possible that we could do the same system to handle all of these like destruction events because we're using the same particles too. So not the, yeah, meteor. This is going to be UFO. I guess we bring these things in. This doesn't need to be meteors. Commands, images, events, sheets, effects. This is going to be ship or UFO. Requires UFO sprites to be loaded. RNG. So this is for UFO destroyed. We only get destroyed at. We spawn the event. We don't have a destroyed type, so we're going to get rid of this whole chunk here. Did I mess up? I don't think so. I think that's an Argus issue. I need to get rid of that Argus plugin because it really, really, really messed with Rust Analyzer. Oh, the link doesn't get through, Steve, unfortunately. Like YouTube auto mods out links, especially from people who aren't mods. But just in general, they auto mod out links. So the link never sent. That's why I didn't see it. MakePad, cross-platform Rust UI development. Yeah, I've heard of MakePad. I have not worked with MakePad. As far as I'm aware, they haven't really like shipped stuff yet. Is that the right thing that I'm talking about? Like MakePad, it exists, but I don't know anybody that's using it. But I have heard of it. I just don't have any insider opinions into it. So UFO lasers, UFO destroyed. Why does this want me to do that? Because I didn't replace this. UFO destroyed. Okay, so the UFO should be able to get hit by lasers now. It's not adding to the score, which it does need to do. See if we can get a lasers or a UFO to spawn here. I didn't add the system to run, did I? Oh, you know what I'm not doing, actually? I don't think I'm actually despawning the UFO in the first place. Okay, so we've got UFO destroyed handler. We're not using commands, so we're not despawning anything. It's one of the really nice things about looking at these function signatures. Like, you kind of know what it's doing. UFO laser collision. So this UFO destroyed, lasers, entity, colliding entities with UFO. Am I not tagging this with UFO? I thought I was. Obstruct UFO. Here's our UFO. Okay, cool. It is getting tagged. So this should... This is not hit. This is loop. I guess we'll debug this once, which needs to be spelt out in full. So debug once will take logs for systems that run all the time, and it will only log out once. So in this case, this system is going to run and run and run and run and run every frame. And this loop then runs every frame. So if we get to here, I only want it to like say, hey, we got here. I don't want it to output every single loop. I'm assuming we don't get in here, so I'm going to let this go all the time. just doing a sanity check because it didn't do what I thought it was going to do, and there's a very like straightforward mistake that I made somewhere. So just going back through and finding it. So this is not running. Query for entity with colliding entities transform with UFO. This loop is not running. I didn't add this, did I? There we go. I knew it was something really silly. So we need to add this to collision. We'll probably make a collision module at some point because it seems like we're having a bunch of related systems here. Okay, so now that should work. Oh, get away from the... All right, so we can destroy UFOs now. It can spawn in UFOs again, and we can destroy the UFO again. So we can kind of just sit here and farm points. I'm not too concerned about that because, you know, it's a single player game. If you want to sit here and farm points, you can. But all of that is working. We need to do scoring now. So for scores, score meteors. This is for meteor destroyed. This runs all the time. Let's do a score UFOs. And we can take this. And this is going to be an event reader for UFO destroyed. And this suddenly has a lot of issues. Meteor, UFO. This is not a match because there's no type. Why is that yelling at me? So to speak. UFO destroyed, not pulled in. Let's go! Yeah. For UFO and reader.read, event reader, UFO destroyed, scores. Make sure Argus isn't messing with me. Meteor score value. Where do I define meteor score value? Oh, it's there. Okay, so let's say UFOs are worth like 500. Because they're supposed to be tough. They're supposed to be like bonus scores. I think it's like per level you should be like increasing the score of the UFO or something like that. But, oh, because I didn't rename it. Score UFOs. That's why. So we'll use an underscore here to get rid of this little warning. So if we're not using a variable, but I still want to keep it around as a named thing, then I can do underscore at the front. So now when we hit a UFO, it should add 500 to the score. And it does. So we're at 940, maybe another UFO spawns, and we're like, nailed it. Perfect. Cool. So scoring is added as well. I do like this too. Like the way you can add things to these systems, or like not like ECS systems, but the way you can add things to like Bevy apps is really nice. Because like all we're doing here is reading the UFO destroyed event, right? And whenever that happens, we increment the score by some amount. And the only thing that needs to care is the scores module, which is very cool. I guess we can go one way or the other, right? We can pull everything into the scores module to do the scoring like UFO destroyed, right? Or we can pull scores module into everything else. But that's a personal choice, I think. So we've got scoring, we've got destruction. If the ship runs into the UFO, it gets destroyed. Is there anything else? Well, that's why I did that to-do list at the beginning. Collision with lasers, score when destroyed. UFO needs to shoot its own lasers. Okay. When you complete the game, can you show how to upload it to Firebase pages and connect to Rust workers for blazing fast edge speeds? I do not use Cloudflare, so I generally won't be doing that. Firebase pages. Actually, we have a thing in the game that prevents it from being used on the web right now. So we can't even put it on itch. This game specifically we can't put on itch because I chose to use Bevy Hanabi. And Bevy Hanabi has a current issue open somewhere. Man, I really don't like that GitHub removes functionality when the window is too small for them. Okay, so there's an issue here for WASM compatibility for our particle system that we're using because it is a GPU-based particle system, and it uses compute shaders. So those are, first of all, only available on web GPU. And second of all, there is this issue here that is kind of like documenting some of the issues with trying to get this plugin in particular running on WASM. I think it's possible now, just nobody's done it yet. So it won't, we're not going to deploy this one to the web anyway. There are other particle systems that you can use that do work just fine on, you know, WebGL or whatever. I just chose not to use them for this project. So the UFO needs to shoot its lasers now. How do we do that? Or how do we want to do that, kind of? Let's do a commit here. Commit UFOs can be destroyed and scored. So push that up. That is on GitHub for anybody that wants to see it. This is the repo. So how do we want to do laser shots from the UFO? We do laser shots from the ship, I think, in controls. So we have a weapon system here for the player. I don't think I want to reuse the weapon system for the player for the ship. We theoretically could. I think if we used Leafwing Input Manager, we would have had an abstraction for sending actions like this already. So we could have reused this and, you know, made everything generic and whatever. I don't necessarily think that's a good idea for, you know, player weapon systems versus like AI weapon systems. We do have a custom collider in here for the lasers. We do need to add one more new component. So maybe we do this, right? So we need, I think we'll need a differentiation between player lasers and UFO lasers, even though we'll use the same movement systems. So we'll derive component as the trash truck arrives outside. Component, and this will be player owned. And I'm just going to drop this in here. So this is a player owned laser at this point. I don't know if we want like an ownership module or something like that. Haven't really gotten to that point in my thought process yet. But I think we can do what UFO owned here. And then since we are doing firing and controls here, we can probably take this weapon system, and this is going to mostly be what handles firing for us. Like the logic is going to be pretty similar. I think we need to know where the player is. So this query for the player with this transform is probably super relevant. The movement factor is only for the ship, I think. So this is going to be not something we use in our calculation. So we're going to get rid of that. This movement factor then has to be redefined, right? But I think it's going to be from UFO to ship. This is going to be UFO owned. And we need to bring in laser. We're not going to do this on keyboard press space. We're going to do this on some kind of timer, I think. This is doing last shot duration. I think that's fine. I think we'll deal with that. I think this is going to be taken care of by limiting this weapon system. So we'll call this like UFO weapon system. Movement factor is not something we're going to do there. We're going to do like let movement factor what vec2 is a, I think it's a vec2 new, and I'm just going to make it like 100 for now. So it's just giving us like a direction to go in for the laser. This is how we're going to define the direction that the laser fires in, which is going to be from the UFO to the transform of the player. There's only ever going to be one UFO and there's only ever going to be one player, so we could loop, but I think what I'm going to do instead... Yeah, okay. So we're already doing like only expecting one player. So that's great for us. So let's take this movement factor and move it down, actually. So the movement factor is going to be what? We've got the transform from the player. And where is the UFO? Did we figure that out yet? I don't think we queried for the UFO here. We do need to know where the UFO is. Query player. Query UFO. This is probably going to yell at me later because we're querying transform components, although they're shared references, so maybe it won't matter. This is going to be query player. I think this is how I'm going to write these queries from now on. It's going to be query and then thing. So let's do transform player. I don't know that that's the right move, but it's what I did. Transform, that's too much stuff. Transform player. Yada yada, laser, movement factor. What is the issue here? We're double dereferencing a thing that doesn't need to be. And then we need to bring in, is laser not public? That is very possible. Vec2. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So let's go back to controls. We probably want a lasers module instead of what I have here. Because this laser movement is in controls for no reason. It's just kind of like you know, where I put it at the time that I wrote it. Which is another thing that people, I think, are nervous about with Rust, like the idea that you can't do things, you know, wrong or whatever. I do things wrong all the time, and it's fine. I think there's a space that Rust occupies in people's minds where it's like you have to write everything correctly and purely and whatever, and you just absolutely do not have to. I think also that those terms we could as an industry use better terms. Like pure and safe and correct are all things that people associate with like moral virtue, and I don't think that that's not the way they're used in programming language terminology, but there's so much overlap with the English language that it's impossible to avoid. I really think we should choose different terms, but we're long past that point at this point. So it will never really change. Query UFO. Like instead of pure, you could say like side effect free or something like that. Or okay, we need to do what? UFO minus player will give us the directional vector that we need. I think that's all we need to do. Because if you have vector A and vector B and you subtract them, then you should get vector C. Assuming I got that right and I didn't, you know, mess it up in my head. Transform UFO, only expected one UFO component. There should only be one UFO. That's fine. I'm okay sometimes doing this kind of single thing. Most of the time I like to loop, but sometimes it does make things simpler. I think now people are worried about investing too much time because of the negative Rust talk. The negative Rust talk. I don't know what that is. Like every language has its haters, right? Like every language has people who like, you know, take an arbitrary language, take JavaScript. JavaScript is famous for having like people who hate its existence. That doesn't mean it's a bad language. JavaScript is fine. It does a lot of good things. Is it the best language? Maybe not. It's the best language for web UI over the last 20 years. So like, can't really take that away from it. Movement factor, transform UFO. So we should be able to do transform UFO minus transform player. And I think we can swizzle this because I think this is a 4-dimensional vector. So we need like X, Y. These do need to be the translations. So we want the like X, Y positions because transforms also include scale and rotation. But we are not looking for scale or rotation. We are only looking for positioning on screen. So we need the translation. And then we're going to swizzle this, which means we're going to take a vector. So like X, Y, Z, W or something, or X, Y or whatever. And we're going to choose some of those components in some order. So the really interesting thing about swizzling is you can do things like XXXY or, you know, whatever. In Rust, they're function calls. But in like shaders, you can just do that as field access. So we don't want this to fire on space. So I think we just get rid of this wrapper. And now we have a little bit of a conflict between whether it can shoot and not. I think we'll leave the timer in here for the moment. We could always rewrite this in a number of different ways. One of which being the we could just set a repeating timer on the UFO and check in this system to see if the timer has completed. I'm actually doing that in a separate project here, which I think everything is still in main. So let's go look for, so like, I want to do some animations in this project over here. So I created this struct called animate loop. That's a component. And I've got a sprite sheet. So I have like a max index. So it's going from like 0 to some index over time. And I've got FPS defined as a timer. So if I go for a looping animation, right, then we take the actual time. We can query for that timer. We tick the timer with the difference in time. And we check to see if it just finished. And if it did, then we do our thing. So this is a really nice pattern. And it's set up just by putting like an FPS component onto something that you're spawning in. So in this case, we've got a 60 frame animation that runs at 20 frames per second effectively. And we set the timer mode to repeating. So this will, you know, keep firing. And we will keep doing that. So I think that that's actually the better way in the grand scheme of things. But we've already got this timer code written in a different way. So I'm just going to leave it like this for the moment. Okay, if can shoot, then whatever. I think we can just run this all the time for the moment. We don't want keyboard input in here anymore. This is going to be super weird because I think this will destroy the UFO right away. So if we run this, I'm expecting a laser to fire from the UFO and the UFO to destroy itself because we do not have any controls around that. Yeah, so every time the UFO spawns right now, the UFO is going to automatically destroy because it's trying to fire basically immediately, and the laser is hitting the UFO, which is good. That's what we wanted. We wanted that specifically because now we can go back and do collision. And in UFO laser collision, or not UFO laser. Yeah, I think in the UFO laser collision, actually. So UFO laser collision. We want lasers that have laser and also player owned. And so like if you look at this, I don't think I made that public thing. Was that in controls? Oh no. Where did I put it? Oh, this is the wrong place for this struct, but it's fine. So this is player owned. So any laser that is player owned should be able to hit a UFO. So our UFO should... Oh, I messed up again. Oh no, I didn't. That's just Argus? I don't know. So it shoots. The laser is, I think, still hitting it, maybe? Or no, it's just moving way too fast. That's what it's doing. So if we go to UFO and we go to movement factor, let's unitize this. So we're going to normalize the vector, which makes the vector have a length of 1. Because this is equivalent to a speed for us, we do want it to be a unit to start with. Oh. I've created a situation in which the ship just keeps firing over and over. Sick. Did I put this into the right? UFO weapon system is in UFO. Query player, query UFO. Movement factor. Oh, you know what? I didn't change the location at which these spawned, did I? transform player. We don't want transform player. We want transform UFO. And I may have to switch the direction of the vector, which is fine. But you can see that the UFO is now sending something. I feel like it's not adjusting enough based on the direction of the ship, which is interesting. It's still moving very quickly. So let me take a look at the laser movement system. Laser movement. So laser movement takes the transform of the laser and the pre-existing movement factor and takes the laser facing direction. So we actually do need to specify the rotation on this laser. And it's multiplied by 1,000. Obviously, this is really fast, as we saw on screen, but that's also fine. So this is taking the rotation of the laser and using it to pick a direction. And then the pre-existing movement factor is kind of like, how should it run? So I think that's actually only a convenience for the ship. And that we probably don't want that overall. Let's see, sprite bundle, transform UFO. How do we point this towards the ship at the moment? We have the vector from the ship to, or from the UFO to the ship, right? So if we have that vector, how do we turn that into a rotation? I don't know that I know that offhand. Can we turn that into radians easily? Let's take a look at Glam. So we actually have a Vec2, so we'll look at Glam. And my brain is blanking on how to get, like from a unit vector, how do you get the rotation? And actually, what is it? Docs.rs, Bevy. So we're going to look at the transform here for a second, because there are definitely rotation related functionalities or functions that we can call on transform. Oh, good. Okay, yeah, this is actually what I was thinking. We can set it to look at a specific target. So in this case, I believe this is going to work, but we'll look at the ship and the up will be Vec3Y effectively. So let's get back over here. Let's do look. Oh, that's not actually a transform. Transform UFO. This is looking at. What's the difference between looking and look? One returns, one's mutable. Gotcha. Looking at, what is it? Transform ship. Translation. And for our up direction, we're going to do a vec2 with a constant of y. So what this does is, I don't know if I typed correctly. What the vec2y does is vec2y is a unit vector. So there are some constants that hopefully are listed on the documentation page. So there are some constants associated with these types. And if you look at the source code, it's literally just putting a 1. So they're unit vectors for the y-axis, unit vectors for the x-axis, and so on and so forth. This translation dot xy, right? See what the actual issue is. Transform cannot be dereferenced. That is this and this are the issues. Oh, it needs a vec3? Interesting. Interesting. I guess technically speaking, in modern game engines, everything is a 3-dimensional space. So what used to happen, as far as I'm aware, this is a bit of a history that I wasn't here for. What used to happen is like 3D engines and 2D engines used to work differently. And what happens today is that everything is basically a 3D engine. And for 2D, you just live in a 3D space, but it's all planes. And my understanding about why that happened is like how GPUs developed and things like that. Local variable, oh, transform player. So hopefully, if I've done this correctly, we spawned on the meteor. Okay, so that's good, at least. I think that we are not doing too great on the directional front here. There's something wrong about how I'm deciding to do this. So let's do this instead. Let's pull this out here and do the subtraction in the other direction. So new game here. Are we not spawning a sprite for those? That's hilarious. The Y is also in the wrong direction, but I think other than that, the X is now fixed. So let's do this minus that dot xy dot normalize times vec2 y negative. So we're inverting the y-axis. And hopefully that will... So the movement factor is basically not that much of an issue in this situation. Hopefully a UFO will spawn soon. Interesting. So the x-axis is off now. Oh, because that's 0. Dang, that's not what I want. I want negative vec2 new 1 negative 1 is really what I want. I don't want negative everything. Because I don't want to zero out the x-axis. I just want to negate the y-axis. Am I streaming in 2 different places? I am not. I am streaming on YouTube alone. Okay, so is the movement factor so strong that it's affecting this? We've normalized it. Do we multiply by the movement factor for lasers? Maybe I should have refactored the laser movement before we did this. So we've got the pre-existing movement factor plus. So we could zero out the movement factor for now. So let's do that. Back to 0. And now we're just looking at the rotation. So now we should see our issue. Feels very weird that we would need to negate y, but y is, I believe, inverted. I just kind of expected that to work differently, but it's fine. It's still in the wrong. So transform UFO, looking at transform player. I might have messed up my manual calculations, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. Because I didn't use these looking ats to do the other lasers. I kind of just did it manually. So I might have turned everything in a weird way. Controls laser facing direction, right, is the rotation times vec3y. The laser facing direction is xy. That's the unit vector, or no, it's not the unit vector, but it's the vector of where we're going, which I believe is a unit vector. Multiply that by 1,000. This is where my math comes back to bite me. So we've got a rotation. A rotation is a quaternion, right? Yeah, rotation is a quaternion. Rotation times vec3y. So I believe that's rotating. And then we're getting xy from that. So this is a vec3 because we've multiplied it by the y-axis. So let's do this, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. Let's do dot debug, and we'll let Rust Analyzer wrap this for us. So every time this happens, we should be able to see the laser facing direction. And then back in UFO, we've got the transform UFO looking at, and then our movement factor is 0, 0, so it's not adding anything. So it is just looking at the player. Unless looking at isn't behaving like I think it's supposed to, which is possible. So rotates this transform so that transform forward points to the target position and transform up points up. If the target is the same as the transform translation, vec3z is used instead. Okay, that makes sense. If up is 0, vec3y is used instead. Cool. If the resulting forward direction is parallel with up, an orthogonal vector is used as the right direction. Okay. That all makes sense. So in 3D space with a camera, this makes total sense to me, right? Like, because you have a camera, it's got a viewport, and that viewport is pointing at something with a rotation of Y up. So when I do looking at here, it should be Y up. Transform player translation XYZ. I feel like this isn't doing what I thought it was doing. Rotate around. That's not what we want. Looking at is the same thing as look at, right? Transform to point. Can I construct this rotation myself? We would need the radians to do that. So let's just take a look at what we're getting out from the looking direction when we run this, because I did add that debug now. So that's all positive. Makes sense, right? This is all negative, and they're all unit, right? Not unit, but that looks wrong though. That looks like the X is actually what we want. It looks like we're using the X as Y and the Y as X. Why would we be doing that? Is that because I chose Y here? I'm just curious to see what this does. I'm validating my assumptions and how this function works. Z is the wrong one. Well, I think we'll say Z is the wrong one, right? Actually, maybe not. I think Z is the wrong one though. I think this is pushing them like into and out of the screen, which is why they look like they're moving super slow. Because if we were debugging XYZ here, I think we would get a very large Z value. So Y up is really what we want. I don't really want to affect the Z at all. Let's see if Glam has something a little bit lower level. From angle. Creates a 2D vector containing cosine sine that can be used in conjunction with the rotate method. Vec2 from angle. Returns the angle in radians in the range negative pi to positive pi. That seems to be what we want. To angle. Gives us an F32, which we can use to construct the quaternion. Do you transform the local XY axis of the UFO to the global axis of your ship? Do you transform? Are you asking if I am doing that or should I be doing that? What I'm doing right now is I'm taking the transform of the UFO and the transform of the player, and I've subtracted them previously. Well, we're not using that right now, but we're taking the UFO and we're pointing that at the player, or we should be pointing it at the player, which I am not actually doing at the moment. So transform is transform UFO dot with rotation quat from rotation Z. And then the angle will be transform UFO minus transform player, translations, and we need to wrap this in 2 angle, right? Or I guess dot XY dot 2 angle. Add a comma here so it all comes back. And we'll see what we get here. Okay, that's better, I feel like. Like, if the x-axis were correct there, then it would be hitting us. So why is the x-axis not correct? Is that because I did the same thing I did earlier and I need to do the subtraction in the other direction? Or is that because we need to invert? Okay, so the x-axis doesn't change regardless, or the x-axis is correct and the y-axis is wrong now. So now what we can do is multiply by our vec2 new 1 negative 1. And we'll take this whole thing, wrap it in more parentheses, because why not? Oof. And now we're pointed in the exact wrong direction, which means I think we need to flip our signs here, is all that means. Not all that means. Oh, okay. For some reason, I feel like this is supposed to be YX. Because we've seen a couple of times now that like the X and the Y seem like they're flipped for some reason. And I either made a typo somewhere or misunderstood something somewhere along the line. And now we get direct shots. So some reason I flipped X and Y. I don't know when I did that. I don't know why I did that. I don't know where in my code base I did that. I can look into it at another time. But that is what's happening there. So to get the rotation, we can't actually use the built-in method because I've flipped something somewhere along the way. Unfortunate. So this completely tracks us and shoots very quickly. So given the option, It also destroys meteors, which I can't decide whether I want to keep or not, honestly. I think I want to keep it. I was thinking about that earlier when we were looking at the laser meteor collision. I think I like the idea that the UFO can hit the meteors. How do I randomize the fire rate? I'm not randomizing it. I'm setting it on a timer. So currently, this system has a timer that detects when the last shot happened. And if it has been, let's say, 2,000 milliseconds. So once every 2 seconds, this thing is allowed to fire now. So now the UFO should pop in and basically shoot, I think, immediately. Just because of the way we have it coded right now. I am randomizing the spawn. It pops in and shoots immediately and 100% hits you. So it's basically just based on that timer. Like I said before earlier, there's better ways of doing that timer. So I'll probably refactor that off stream. But this UFO now spawns on the screen, shoots exactly where the player is. I don't know that I want it to shoot exactly where the player is. It definitely needs to be slower if it's going to do that. Because otherwise the player will just insta-die. So maybe laser takes a speed too. So what if laser was like movement factor, speed? I think movement factor is my speed, and I've just confabulated the two things. Because if we go back and we look at controls, this is roughly what I'm talking about. So we take the facing direction, which is now the correct unit vector. Actually, you know what I didn't check? I didn't check to make sure that our ship laser is correct. Yeah, okay. Ship laser doing fine. Wonderful. Oh, we destroyed the UFO. That's nice. Okay, so let's get rid of this debug. This is all good. Our math works out. I flipped X and Y for some reason. I don't know where I did that or when I did that. Or there's just a math thing that I didn't quite understand. But we've got this movement factor, which we're adding to the directional vector times 1,000. And I think in general, we could probably just get rid of this movement factor and just use the speed. If we do that, what happens to the player's lasers? Yeah, I originally copied this movement code from my ship controller, which is why the movement factor exists, because the ship has to have a pre-existing movement to feel weighty, right? To feel like it's floating in space and it has like some mass to it. But for the lasers, I don't actually think that's accurate. So let me take a look at the weapon system. And if this movement factor is also 1, pre-existing movement factor is this movement factor. I think that's actually the ship movement factor now that I think about it. Because in the ship movement, yes, actually it matters for adding the ship movement to the laser movement. That's what that matters for. So if we run this again, I should be able to show that off. So if we go really quickly this way, right? And I shoot, oh, if I don't hit the UFO, and I shoot, these are kind of like going straight, if that makes sense. Like they're landing exactly where the ship fires them. And what I wanted to happen originally was if, your ship is moving like that, I want the lasers to move like that too. So if we go this way, these lasers move at the same speed of the ship. So you're not getting a perfectly accurate like vertical shot whenever you do it. However fast your ship is moving, that gets added to the laser movement. So that's what the movement factor is. I think that the UFO probably doesn't want that. So we probably zero it out. But then we also need a speed component to the lasers. So let's do this. Movement factor is going to be a Vec2. And then speed will be an F32. If I got my syntax right. And then I want to document this. Movement factor is ship's movement speed at time of firing. Speed is laser's inherent movement speed. So now we can take this and we can do movement factor and speed. So I'll remove that now that it's documented and do this as speed. Why is that not happy? Yada, yada, yada. Let's look for 61. No implementation of Vec2 times a reference to an F32. We don't need a reference. Looks a little weird when we do it like this, but that's fine. F32s are copy, so we dereference it. We get a new F32 here. And then wherever we construct a laser, we now need to add our new logic. Movement factor. And for the ship's lasers, they'll be 1,000. And for the UFO's lasers, I don't know, let's slow it down quite a bit, right? Because we want the user or the player to have like an opportunity to avoid them. Why don't I have a YouTube thank you button so people can give you money? That is because the way that I make money is through Rust Adventure. So this is a subscription where I upload more thought through and researched workshops relating to Rust. And this is how I make my money. So I don't have a YouTube thank you button or a Patreon or anything like that because I would prefer the method of providing, you know, educational resources that people actually find useful over kind of just like the occasional $5 here or there, if that makes sense. So the work that I do on YouTube is part of the Rust Adventure stuff. For example, this Asteroids game, I'll probably refactor this and turn it into a workshop. But then it'll be on the workshop page and you'll be able to, you know, view the videos and it'll explain things in detail. Because like what I'm doing right now is just kind of like hanging out, talking, building stuff. But the workshop lessons then are significantly more involved. So I put more effort into them. Do we think that's good for the lasers? I don't know that it matters particularly. It is awkward that it shoots immediately, but I'm not too concerned about that. I think that there's something to be said for workshops having slightly off functionality, if that makes sense. Like, if you don't find the way this laser fires fun, then you should go change it. And I think that that's a really great way of making some opportunities. Obviously, like, if it's fundamentally broken, that's not good. But if you wish these lasers fired faster, or, you know, were a different sprite, or whatever, that's all stuff that is absolutely valid, but is also something that is really nice to just give people the opportunity to go work on. Okay, so we do need to have the laser hitting the ship. I think we should also choose a different laser sprite. Which sprite do we have here? 105. Where's Space Sheet? Space Sheet 105. This will be 107 in this dock. So it's laser blue here. Let's do laser red 1. I think that's right. 137. And this is a fairly involved game, so I assume that it'll be actually... There we go. So let me turn off the collision debug for a second, because I think that's really kind of... Like, it's fine, but it definitely gets in the way of the actual visuals. So pull this up. New game. Ugh, avoid. So we've got blue lasers coming from the blue ship, red lasers coming from the UFO. I cannot hit the UFO for my life. I'm actually not good at playing this game, which is kind of hilarious. Okay, we're on level 2. We don't really say like, oh, you're on level 2. We just spawn in some... we spawn in some new meteors and stuff. So probably we want the UFO to actually not spawn so fast. We do have it a little bit randomized, but I think I sped it up intentionally. So we'll probably remove that a little bit. Ooh! Oh wait, I forgot I didn't implement the collision for the lasers yet. I thought I was actually going to get my ship destroyed. Okay, so the other thing we need is ship laser collision effectively. So UFO fires lasers, right? These lasers are UFO owned. So when we do our collision, this is UFO laser collision, right? This is meteor laser collision, and this is ship meteor collision. We effectively need the ship collision to happen with lasers that are UFO owned. Can you slow down the rotation of the ship so it's easier to aim? Absolutely. 100% you can do that. If you look at the controls, there's a rotation system in here. So player movement system. And there's a rotation factor. And it goes plus and minus 1 right now over the delta seconds. And basically we set this rotation speed on the ship. So I actually set this up to be modifiable per ship. So based on which ship you could use, you could set a different rotation speed. And this is degrees per second. So if you wanted it to move slower, you could make this like 180 in 1 second, or something like that. Or you could make the movement speed something smaller or bigger or whatever. Which I think is interesting, because then you get different characteristics for each ship and whatnot. Brain is not working. Is there something that you would like explained? UFO owned lasers. Okay, so this is not the collision system, right? This is the weapon system. We've got UFO owned on these lasers. We've got our collision systems over here in lib. This is a ship collision with a meteor or a UFO. We do need the ship destroyed. I think this logic is all sound. This is with meteor, with UFO. I don't know how deeply I can nest these, actually. So if we do with UFO owned, technically this will work the way we have it currently set up. Oh, not two owned. Did I not make that public? I don't think I did. So technically, I believe this will work. I'm not inherently super happy with it. Because theoretically the UFO, I guess UFO owned could be something like UFO owned destruction device or UFO owned weapon or something. Okay, so now you do get destroyed by the laser, which is very cool. The laser does not get despawned, which is unfortunate because I think that causes a bug. The laser has to despawn. So let's do option laser. There's something like this. But I think what we'll do instead is query lasers. So we'll do query for anything that has a laser on it. That is, I guess, UFO owned, right? UFO owned lasers is all we care about here. So in this sense, this is not meteors. In this sense, if the colliding entities contains that other entity, we're getting rid of the player. And then if query lasers.get entity meteor, which is not necessarily a meteor, just to be clear. We'll do if let some laser entity. Keyboard navigation is not great in VS Code equals this, right? I think that's optional, right? Is it optional or is it a result? I thought it was optional. I guess it's the result. That is a query for lasers though, and we do need it to be a query for entity. So we'll do with UFO owned with laser here. This is also a query for entities. So if we could figure out our filters correctly here, this would work out just fine. But we could do without meteor here. And probably without UFO. Components not implemented for entity. That was my issue. Do we even need these here? No, we don't. Okay. I just assumed that there was an issue and there was no issue. Okay, great. Wonderful. Laser entity, and then we'll do commands.entity laser entity. Because this is just going to despawn, right? This is just going to go away. If the laser hits, then the laser should go away. This way we won't get whatchamacallit, double deaths, I guess. Well, it does look like we just got one. Rust is hard. That is true for anything that you are not already an expert in. So we're looking okay here. The lasers do despawn. I'm not seeing any double deaths, which is great. Single death, single death, single death. Wonderful. Get some score here. Avoid a laser maybe if I can play the game. Destroy a UFO, get some scores. Can I get that last little one? Okay, so we're level 2. UFO spawns. Destroy the UFO, get some points. Yada, yada, yada. Hit a meteor, hit the UFO. Need to do a new game. New game, new ship. That looked interesting, whatever just happened. I tried to learn Rust 3 months ago, but not get it, then I gave up. What was the issue? Like what made you give up on it? Our score isn't resetting. I think there is a current bug where that's why I had the debug stuff on all the time. Where's main? There is a current bug where the colliders don't line up for some reason, which may or may not be a bug in XPBD. I haven't looked into it. But like there's all this yada yada yada, whatever. We do the whole thing. Didn't despawn something. Level 3, huzzah. New game, new ship. Destroy the ship. I'm gonna get hit. Okay. New game. Okay, things look fine. Good enough anyway. Memory management helps. Oh, yeah. I'm a JavaScript developer. Low level is not for me. I tried to learn Rust for hype, not for use cases, maybe for that. Yes, 100%. If you don't have a thing you want to build, it becomes really tough. Because then you're just kind of like reading documentation or like reading the Rust book or whatever. If you are a front-end developer or a JavaScript person in general, I would point you here. And this probably makes it more reasonable for you to try to learn Rust, because this is a domain that you probably already have experience in, instead of doing something like, I don't know, networking or kernel development or like one of those low-level things, you know, or embedded development or whatever. If you're interested in using Rust, if you're already competent in JavaScript, Leptos is a great framework. I use it myself for this site here, This Week in Bevy. It's got islands. It's got the things that you expect from a front-end JavaScript framework. Yeah, that's my pitch. I would say if you're going to learn Rust and you're looking for a use case and you already know JavaScript, take a look at Leptos. Because it's going to be a lot closer to what you already know. It's important to learn fundamentals that are in all programming languages. Learn C as a first language. Help me understand Rust a lot. I don't think that there's a huge predisposition for people to say that you need to know like C or something before you learn Rust, and I just don't think that's true. I think that Rust, as formulated, is a replacement for C in some respects. So I get where that comes from, right? Because it's like kind of competing with C in different places. for new software. But there is, like, what we're writing right now is not low level code. Like, I don't know what everybody else considers low level code, but like, this is not, I'm not manually managing any memory here. You know, this is like basically JavaScript to me. You know, it's like function calls, and maybe some things like traits are new here, right? Like gen range, et cetera, et cetera. Like there are new syntaxes, but this is basically JavaScript if you're writing a Bevy app. Does your ship have brakes? No, ship does not have brakes. Ship is in space. Space does not have brakes. So it'll just keep going if I let it, and my hands are off the keyboard. I kind of like that. I did leave myself an option to change that if I wanted to. So in controls, we've got our movement, and there's a else statement here that handles decaying the movement factor. So if you hands off keyboard, the original Asteroids game will slow you down if you're not actively pressing a direction. I left it in here in case I wanted to do it. I kind of like the idea of floating around a bit. I haven't decided whether I'm going to do that or not yet. You don't understand what function, sum function, impulse something. And somebody is saying that, have you seen interfaces in Java? That's basically returns an object of interface. Yes. Basically what that function is saying is it returns something that implements whatever that trait is. And if you haven't seen traits, traits are kind of a fundamental feature of Rust. So let's say, what is a trait in here? Material, maybe. So here's a trait. This is probably not a trait that is, you know, super easy to understand, but the idea here is that there's a material trait. You have a bunch of functions that either need to be or can be implemented. These happen to all have defaults. And if I returned something that implemented material, then you would just need to return something that implemented material. So at a high level, it also makes a bunch of separate code for each actual type you decide to return, so beware of bloat. Yeah, I think that most people who don't know what return impulse something means probably aren't at the stage where they need to care about bloat yet. I think that there's a lot of pedagogy in the computing space where people think you need to learn either like the fundamentals or advanced optimizations or care about everything. And I think that really detracts from people who are just learning. So for example, like you'll get a bunch of people who say you have to use references, never clone anything, which is really harmful to beginners, because especially when you're first learning, but also in like just prototyping code, right? Cloning doesn't matter until you have a thing that works, right? Unless you're actually measuring something and it's actually a problem, optimizing ahead of time is mostly just going to cause pain. Unless you like are super experienced and already know what you're doing. But at that point, you don't need to suggest to somebody that they need to optimize something because they already know. Okay, so we're pretty good on UFO, right? I think everything's actually good here in terms of gameplay. I think we want to slow down the UFO spawning a little bit. But the ship spawns, ship gets destroyed by laser, meteors get destroyed by laser. We don't have any new lives system or anything. I don't know that I care enough to do that. I don't know that a new live system is worth it for the trade-off for writing the code for like a workshop or something. Because like this isn't really, I guess, a game that people are going to be playing much. Like I'm not going to deploy it on Steam and get a bunch of users, you know? it's more of a learning exercise, and I don't know that implementing new lives is worth it in that respect. I wish Bevy would just basically slap box on everything. Are you having issues with references and stuff? Is there some other resource other than the Rust book explaining these type of immediate concepts with examples? There's a couple. Let's see. There's so I have my own site. I'm not going to advertise my site right now. There's the Rust cheat book. There's the Bevy cheat book. So since we're working with Bevy, I'll mention this first. There's a bunch of things here for a bunch of different things. Bundles, systems, param sets, writing tests. Like some of this is like core Rust related. Some of this is directly Bevy related, or most of it's directly Bevy related. There's Rust by example, which is a whole bunch of like maybe different things that you can do with Rust. Like if we do conversion, this has examples for the from and into traits and some small explanations. Generics, modules, whatever you want to kind of like learn a little bit about. I would say Rustlings, except it doesn't have explanations. So if I search for my own video, there's Rustlings, which is a bunch of examples in a Git repo that you can go through. They don't explain the answers to the problems, but I do here. So you can go through all of those. There's a couple of different places you can look for things depending on what you're looking for. The other thing that I'll mention is almost every crate that you want to use in the Rust ecosystem has this folder, and this folder is just an examples folder. So if I was using Bevy and I wanted to figure out how to write a shader, I would go to the shader directory in the examples, and I would go, okay, which one of these looks like something that I might want? I already happen to know what a lot of these are. Like this is an extended standard material example, and it'll give you all the code that you need to write a shader that extends from the standard material. Let's say I wanted to animate a shader over time or something. Here's the code for that. Maybe I wanted to figure out something with the ECS. I could go to the ECS directory and say, oh, what are events actually? I don't really understand how events work. And there's examples for all those things. So this is a very common thing. I think if I go for clap GitHub Rust, I bet you, I haven't looked, but I bet you they have an examples folder, and they do, sitting right here. So yeah, couple things to look at. You dream of something with such powerful typing and strictness like Rust, but with GC? I mean, you could. Write a second level language on top of Rust. You could definitely do that. Somebody could do that. There's a video on YouTube where a guy makes Vampire Survivors like game with Bevy by copying stuff from Bevy examples. Yeah, you're talking about Sean? What did he name that video? Let me search for it off screen before I... So this is what I was looking for. And I think this is what you were mentioning. So Sean streams on Twitch and does a Vampire Survivors like game and uploads all the archives to YouTube. So if you're interested in that, that's definitely a thing. Oh, Bones. Yeah. Bones is another one. So Bones, do you have a full tutorial on this? I thought it was just a demo of their implementation. They definitely do have Bevy videos, which is great. I guess it is a tutorial. Yeah. So this video right here, this Bevy top-down shooter tutorial with massive enemy hordes, is, I think, a walkthrough of this previous video with the KD tree. Okay, so let's slow down event for UFO spawning a little bit, I guess. Whereas periodically spawn UFO, fixed update, fixed from seconds. I guess let's make this every 10 seconds. And other than that, I don't know that there's anything really left to do in this game. I think we're done with this game. We've got scoring, we've got lives. We don't have incrementing lives, but we have decrementing lives. We have UFOs shooting at the player. We have the player getting destroyed by meteors. We have the player getting destroyed by lasers. We have the engine. We have the movement for the ship with some mass. We have even the settings for the play audio or not, which I might actually remove because I don't know. I don't know that it adds that much. It's a cool game. Yeah, I mean, it's just Asteroids, right? It's fine. It's got a menu. It's got Asteroids. It plays. You can choose ships. I think that there are things in here that are useful for other people who are looking to, you know, do some more Bevy stuff and things like that. I don't know when and if I turn this into a workshop, I might opt to go with collision layers. So there's a significant amount of refactoring that I think I need to do to make this something worth teaching. Because this is just kind of like I wrote this on a plane and then I wrote it on stream over the course of a couple weeks. So, you know, that doesn't necessarily lend itself to writing the best code. So maybe collision layers are a better way to deal with the, you know, collisions between different items. Collision layers are really cool. Let's see if I can find it. I think I have to go to the docs page. Docs.rs, Bevy, XPBD, 2D. The other thing is that crates often have very good documentation. Not everything does. I won't say that everything does, but there is a larger culture of documentation in the Rust ecosystem than I've seen in other places. So collision layers is a way to indicate what can collide with what at the physics like collision level, right? So instead of writing, I would say that we're writing kind of high level systems over the top of the physics library. Like these colliding systems do use like things from the physics library, right? Like this colliding entities comes from Bevy XPBD. We are using the colliding data from Bevy XPBD, but we're kind of writing our own collision handling like systems on top. Collision layers lets us put that logic into the physics system itself, basically. So Bevy XPBD then can handle what should be colliding with what. So you can put something in a layer. In this case, they have an example called game layer. There's player, enemy, and ground. Maybe they layer one, the player collides with enemy and collides with ground. But maybe the enemies don't collide with the ground for some reason and only collide with the player. So you can do that kind of thing. And then anything you put on like the player layer maybe doesn't collide with itself. The way you set these up is actually you specify like what layer they're on and then what layers they collide with. So you could put a bunch of things like lasers, for example, on the player layer, and then the player's lasers won't collide with itself. and that just will never show up in your systems. So that kind of thing is really nice. I forget what I just used that for. No, I used that for the infinite Pong example. So this video right here, Infinite Pong and the Bevy game engine, that is using Bevy ECS tile map and this collision layers approach. So collision layers is really nice. It's actually really important in that demo because there are like two paddles that need to collide with different things. It's great to see the thought process of how you work in a live video. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of utility in that. I really like doing it. It's not the main thing that I do. Like I don't live stream as my primary thing. Done on stream. Close with comment. But I do think it's nice. I think it's nice to like walk through that kind of thing. I think there's a place for live streams and there's a place for videos, you know? Let's see, do we have anything left to commit? We do. GAU, git commit, UFOs fully implemented. Prince might still be watching and screaming at my I guess it's not a PR, but my commit messages are not good on this project right now. Actually, this is also Bevy. So I did this demo loading indicator thing. So imagine you boot up a Bevy app and you like have a game that you actually want to show off. This is the loading. It uses Bevy Asset Loader, actually loads things. This is a progress bar. And then you're into the start menu and there's a bunch of icons and stuff. And this is inspired by the Hades start menu. And that's actually the code that I was just showing earlier with the timer. I don't know what the next stream about is going to be. Guess no mouse aiming for us. I don't know that mouse aiming is super useful. I mean, we could do mouse aiming. I feel like the way the ship is oriented, it lends itself to controller-based usage or like keyboard-based usage. But we could do mouse aiming. It'll have to be the next stream because we kind of hit our time limit today. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe we'll do mouse aiming next stream. Aside from this, basically Asteroids is mostly done. If we don't do mouse aiming next stream, we'll start something new. I don't know what we're going to start. Change the particle shader to OpenGL and show how to upload to the web. I could just show you how to upload something to the web. It doesn't need to be this game. There's a couple of alternative approaches that we could use to those particles. I do think that Bevy Hanabi over the longer term is going to be a more powerful solution. So I would prefer to show that in general, but there definitely are CPU based particle systems. I'll have to think about it, but I definitely can upload something. A couple of people have asked for how do you ship a game? Like how do you get something onto itch or whatever? Bevy game template. And there's two places that I would point people. Am I going to be able to find it? There we go. There's two places I would point people for that. There's an official Bevy GitHub CI template, which if you go into the GitHub workflows, this is where all the magic happens. And this includes a way to automatically upload to itch.io. And then there's also a Bevy game template here on the right, which also includes a bunch of GitHub workflows that show how to build not just for web and desktop, but also how to do iOS and Android mobile. You're trying to figure out how to get it compatible to the iOS browser and Android. You're talking about like web-based mobile games? Or are you talking about like native mobile? For native mobile, this Bevy game template has the answer for you. For web mobile, what I would guess, I would ask what trouble you're running into. Let's see. Invite people, edit invite link. So I'm going to end stream in a second. This is the Discord. If you want to ask more questions and stuff, or suggest things for next stream. I don't know what we're going to do next stream yet. If you have an opinion on what kind of game we should work on, I would like to build something that is reasonably small that we can go from beginning to published. There's no video tutorial on YouTube is your problem. Okay. I'll put that on my list. There's a couple people that have asked for that. So it's probably a good one to do. But yeah, I think our next game is going to be something that probably ships to the web. That also can do a full life cycle. So I don't know if it's going to be something similar to Asteroids or a different kind of game. I think that one of the really interesting things that exists in the ecosystem right now is Kenny's assets, actually. So there's a whole bunch of different asset packs here. And we could just do like an asset flip kind of game, right? Where we pick one of the asset packs and build a game around it. For example, this is a pack for a pixel platformer. So maybe we do LGTK, Bevy ECS tile map, and a really basic like platformer example. 3D Minesweeper. I don't know how you would do inner layers of a cube or something for 3D Minesweeper. A cathedral board game. What's a cathedral board game? I'm unfamiliar with Cathedral, although I do see it is actually a board game. But yeah, I'll look into stuff. But that's going to be it for today. Thanks for hanging out. And I'll see you next week. It's going to be every week, same time. You get to show off Bevy UI capabilities. Yeah, I guess. That's what I did in the other thing. This is all Bevy UI right here. So all these buttons, all these icon buttons, all the imagery on screen, this is all Bevy UI. There's a version in the top right, etc. Orthographic game like The Sims. Yeah, not a bad idea. All right, yo. I'm going to head out. I'll see you next week. Thanks for showing up. Appreciate you all. And I'll see you in the next one.